Ironically, Candace Parker is in a little bit of a hot seat right now.
Yeah, she probably shouldn't go to Chicago.
Candace Parker has just broken one of the unwritten rules of the WNBA, and now the backlash is fierce. If you've been paying attention, you know that the world of women's basketball is rapidly evolving. Caitlin Clark, the fastest rising star the league has ever seen, is driving historic ratings, selling out arenas, breaking records, and yet she's still getting criticized for it. But here's the shocking part. It's not just her. Anyone who dares to support Caitlin without equally praising every other player becomes a target. And it's happening right now to one of the most decorated legends the league has ever seen, Candace Parker. At this point, it's undeniable that Caitlin Clark is the driving force behind the WNBA's growth. Fourth in MVP voting, single-season, assist record holder, Times Athlete of the Year in her rookie season. You don't rack up a resume like that without being generational. But here's the issue. The moment you say that out loud without adding, and by the way, everyone else is just as important, you're labeled as part of the problem. The mob goes after you. That's exactly what's happening to Candace Parker. She's been steady in her praise for Caitlin for months, but this week she went even further. Not only did she defend Clark against one of the dumbest talking points circulating, but she also turned the spotlight back on the very people pushing that narrative. That's when things shifted. Candace wasn't just defending a player, she was taking a stand against a prevailing narrative. And in this league, that's a line you're not supposed to cross. So what exactly did Candace say? And why is it hitting a nerve with the old guard? Let's break it down. But before we dive into the details, if you're enjoying watching Candace take on the WNBA mob, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Candace recently said, "When you bring opinions to the table, you have to back them up. You can't just say things without proof." Sadly, Candace, you're learning the hard way that this is not how the WNBA works. When it comes to Caitlin Clark's impact, both on the court and in the league's bank account, the playbook for many has been clear. Either hide it or downplay it until it seems like no big deal. And don't just take my word for it. Look at what ESPN did with the All-Star Game numbers. Sure, they posted the ratings, but they didn't compare this year's game to last year's, the one Caitlin Clark actually played in. No, they jumped all the way back to 2023. Why? Because if they compared it to last year, they'd have had to admit the truth. Ratings were down 36% without Caitlin Clark on the court. And there's no legitimate reason to omit the most recent data unless you're trying to downplay Caitlin's effect and spin the narrative that the league is thriving without her. But here's the kicker. This isn't a new move. This is one of the old guard's greatest hits. Even though Caitlin is literally making everyone in the WNBA richer, they've set this bizarre condition. You can't just celebrate her success. You have to praise everyone else as well. If you don't, you're accused of tearing down the league. And that double standard becomes especially glaring when it comes to Angel Reese. This is where Candace really stepped into the fire. For reasons that the league has never been able to justify with numbers, the WNBA seems obsessed with elevating Angel Reese to the same level as Caitlin Clark in terms of popularity. Now, Angel has done an amazing job building her brand outside of Caitlin. She's probably the most recognizable player in the league right now. But here's the truth. No one is allowed to speak without the mob coming for them. Angel Reese is not on Caitlin Clark's level, either in talent or economic impact. The second you point that out, the outrage is instant. You can bring all the receipts, cite all the stats, or even point out the fact that Angel's team moved to a 20,000-seat arena just for games against Caitlin Clark, but still can't sell out Wintrust Arena, which is half the size. None of it will matter. If you dare to evaluate Angel against Caitlin honestly, you'll get crucified. Meanwhile, it's open season on Caitlin Clark. No one bats an eye when she's attacked. And now that Caitlin's been sidelined for most of this season, looking less than 100%, the usual suspects are circling like vultures, taking every opportunity to tear her down and diminish her impact. Case in point. After the Fever won the Commissioner's Cup without Caitlyn and followed it up with a victory over the Aces, ESPN analyst Carolyn Peck didn't just praise the team. She outright suggested that the Fever might actually be better off without Caitlin Clark. Look, I get it. Indiana might look even more dangerous when Caitlin Clark isn't playing. But when you hear these constant slights against the WNBA's biggest star, you can't help but ask, why? What's the real reason behind all the attacks on her? Because Caitlin Clark is a ball-dominant guard, the ball is always in her hands, so you know what you need to try to take away. But when you look at Indiana now, they've got so many weapons. And trust me, this is just the beginning of the narrative spiral. After the Fever went on a 5-game winning streak, instead of celebrating the run, the better without Caitlin narrative resurfaced. We have to deal with the possibility that the Indiana Fever are better without Caitlin Clark right now, they said. It sounds crazy, right? But that's exactly what they're claiming. And now it's gone from subtle digs to outright dismissal. People are actually saying Caitlin Clark just isn't that good. The same people who keep pushing the Caitlin Clark isn't that special narrative are trying to paint her as overrated. Here's the part they don't want you to hear. The Fever are 8-5 with Caitlin Clark in the lineup, but they're 9-9 without her. That's not just a stat, that's a statement. Every time the better without Caitlin narrative comes up, reality slaps it down. But this is the state of the WNBA today. If someone can find a way to downplay Caitlin Clark's impact, they'll do it. It doesn't matter if the evidence immediately proves them wrong, and that's why what happens next is so important. Into this mess steps Candace Parker, a WNBA legend who's not just defending Caitlin Clark, but actively challenging the narratives pushed by the old guard. By doing so, she's becoming a martyr in this whole ordeal. Candace has been complimentary of Caitlin Clark before, but this is where the heat started to rise. On ESPN's First Take, when asked about the resentment around the league regarding Caitlin getting so much attention, Candace didn't tiptoe around it. She didn't give the safe answer. She spoke bluntly, logically, and exactly what the haters didn't want to hear. And of course, it sparked a whole new wave of outrage. It's so crazy to me because I'm asked so many times if I feel resentful of where the WNBA is right now, Candace said. My job was to leave the game better than I came into it. You think Cheryl Miller is resentful that I had a league to play in? No. She's mentoring and cheering on Juju Watkins. I'm doing the same for Caitlin Clark and all the women in the WNBA. Candace wasn't shy about it. She looked straight into the camera and told the WNBA, stop being jealous, stop being insecure, and start recognizing that Caitlin Clark is about to make everyone rich. That kind of common sense is obvious to fans, but completely radioactive to the mob. And she didn't stop there. When Jamal Hill took a cheap shot at Caitlin's turnovers, Candace swatted it right back. Freakish floor vision, Candace said. I know she had that 10-turnover game, but you learn from those mistakes. We all turn the ball over. Especially when you're the focal point of the defense, you're going to take risks, and sometimes those risks pay off, sometimes they don't. No apology, no sugarcoating. Candace stood her ground, defending Caitlin again. But this is where she stepped into real trouble, at least in the eyes of the old guard. When the conversation turned to comparing Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, Candace made the ultimate WNBA cardinal sin. She was more complimentary of Caitlin. Caitlin Clark is at an A level. I think in time she's going to raise to that S level, but to put her there, she needs a couple more years, Candace said. As for Angel Reese, I put her at the C level. She's fantastic at her role, which is offensive rebounding. She showed so much growth in her first year, and that was it. The match to the gasoline. Angel Reese's fans lost their minds. Twitter was flooded with posts accusing Candace of being out of touch, demanding she take notes from Lisa Leslie and Aja Wilson, who always make sure to heap praise on Angel Reese. But instead of debating the point, the mob made it personal. The backlash grew so loud that Cheryl Swoops herself jumped in, essentially agreeing that Candace shouldn't have said what she did. In this climate, if you compliment Caitlin Clark and don't immediately declare Angel Reese an A-tier player, you're blacklisted, period. But Candace didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. Candace Parker didn't back down. In fact, she doubled down. She challenged the question, asking, "What player are you taking over Angel Reese from the list I just mentioned?" And when there was no immediate response, she added, "Guess. We'll wait for the answer." She went on to say, "But what I'm asking is, which player are you putting Angel Reese ahead of? Are you taking her over Paige, Enrique, Sabrina, Kelsey, Caitlin, Asia, Enfiso, or Brianna?" No, right? That doesn't make her a bad player, and it certainly doesn't make me a hater. Do I think she could be up there? Yes. Candace didn't. Stop there. She tore into one of the worst All-Star Game performances in recent memory, saying, "Y'all can't come out there wearing shirts that say, 'Pay us what you owe us,' and then put on that performance in the All-Star Game." She continued, "It could have been a moment to maximize, but after one slow Euro step and people pulling up for shots, I was like, I can't watch this. I'm a fan of the WNBA, and I couldn't even keep watching." And she's right. The All-Star Game, after players wore those "Pay us what you owe us" shirts, was embarrassing. The energy was flat, the pace was slow, and the ratings ESPN tried to hide would have been worse if Caitlin Clark hadn't been sitting on the sidelines, keeping viewers engaged. Caitlin was acting as an assistant coach and bench cheerleader, and let's be honest, if she hadn't been playing that role, the ratings would have dropped even further. From her comments, it's clear Candace Parker knows exactly what's going on. She's not speaking off the cuff. She understands Caitlin Clark's impact better than most in the league. And I think that's why she's willing to step into the fire and challenge the anti-Caitlin narrative. She's countering it because she knows the truth. The WNBA needs leaders who will celebrate Caitlin Clark objectively, not bend to a mob that would rather sink back into irrelevance without her than win with her. And just when you thought Candace might ease up, she came right back with another hit, addressing one of the mob's favorite talking points, the claim that the Fever are better off without Caitlin Clark. Candace shot that narrative down immediately. "They're not better without Caitlin," she said. "But at times like this, other players step up like Natasha Howard did during the Commissioner's Cup." She made it clear that there's no hate for the Fever. Yes, the team has performed well without Caitlin, but Candace pointed out that they'll be much stronger when she's back. Aaliyah Boston, the franchise's star alongside Caitlin, sat right there nodding in agreement. Nobody in that locker room was offended by Candace's comments. Then Candace took it further. "It's honestly scary because when you allow other people to step up, you're also giving Caitlin a chance to survey and see how she can add even more to the team," Candace said. "It's just common sense." But in the WNBA, sometimes common sense needs to be said out loud. Why? Because the "better without Caitlin" talk scares the old guard. If the Fever are already in the top half of the standings without Caitlin, just imagine how much stronger they'll be when she returns. The Fever will become contenders, and when they play exciting, winning basketball, the kind that turns every game into an event, fans will show up by the millions. The proof is already there. When Caitlin returned against the Liberty, she delivered one of the most electrifying performances in the league, and millions tuned in to watch. It'll happen again. The fans will return, the ratings will spike, and Caitlin Clark's impact will once again be undeniable, whether the haters like it or not. And this is where Candace Parker deserves real credit. While so much of the WNBA is stuck in short-term pettiness, protecting egos, and catering to the mob, Candace is thinking long-term and taking all the heat that comes with it. Ironically, much of the heat is coming from the same people who tell new fans to respect the legends. Candace is that legend, and she's showing what true leadership looks like. She's checking her ego at the door, standing up for the truth, and cutting through the narratives that are dividing the league. Candace is right. We live in an era where too many people just say things without thinking, and she doesn't want to be a part of that. The reality is, without Caitlin Clark, and without voices like Candace Parker willing to defend her, the WNBA risks wasting the greatest growth opportunity it's ever had. If you're still with me, drop a trophy in the comments to show that you made it to the end and to give Candace the flowers she deserves. Thanks for watching.